Hi everyone. I'm just going to wait a few more minutes for people to join, but I'm hoping that you can all hear me. I've also posted the number in the chat for the phone if you have any problems with your video or audio. And we're also going to record this for later viewing because I know that some of you can't join today or might want to drop off, so feel free to do so. So I'm just going to wait another minute before we get started, but I just wanted to go through some of the technical aspects first. So if you want to, you can post questions through the chat function, and I'll try to answer them as we go along if they're relevant to that section. Otherwise, I'll hold them for the Q&A at the end. But by all means, feel free to use the chat function for Q&A. I think this should take a little over an hour today. I've booked a bit longer, but we've got a relatively straightforward agenda, and we're hopefully not just going to hear from you. We want to hear from you as well through the Q&A function, and we can set up some more of a conversation to the extent that that's possible in this format. Um, Right. So if you don't have a dial-in number or you're having any technical difficulties, you can also find that on the Trello board or on the group spaces site where the original email is also posted. And so I've put that there for you guys as well. And we're going to hope that this technology works today for everyone and that it will help us to share some of the grants that we've already made through the Connect Fund. Um, Right. I think we should get started. I'm just want to welcome you here today. I'm Jessica Brown. I'm the fund manager for the Connect Fund. The Connect Fund is managed at the Barrow Cadbury Trust in partnership with the Access Foundation for Social Investment. We've been here almost a year now, so it's really good time to reflect back on what we've achieved in that time. And so what I'm going to do today is to try to share with you a brief overview of where we are, where things currently stand. And then I'm going to talk through some of the grants that have been made with the hopes that you can begin to understand what some of your other colleagues are working on. And ultimately with the overarching objective of sort of launching our learning community and trying to connect you better to each other and trying to foster some of the network and knowledge exchange that we want to happen. So without any further ado, I'll kick off with that agenda. And after I've talked through the overview and some of the grants, I'm going to ask that two of our grantees give us a bit of a deep dive. So I'll play you their take on their grants and what they're doing. And then following that, I'll talk through some of the tools for collaboration that we've set up in the hopes that you can make better use of them and share some of your stories and some of the findings and resources that you're working on. And then I'll open it up to Q&A if you have any questions that haven't been answered during the presentation. Right, so let me crack on with our presentation here. Right. So as you all know, because you've been actively involved with this from the start, the Connect Fund launched in 2017. It was initially a £1.5 million fund that Access accepted their Cadbury Trust as a partner to manage. And because of the demand that we received and the really exciting proposals that we got, we went back to Access and we've now doubled the size of the fund. So that's very exciting. And the confirmation of the demand that's out there to work on some of these challenges that the sector is facing. I mean, our key objectives when we set up the fund were to try to strengthen the social investment market, to try to build a better market that works for smaller to medium-sized organizations, to try to broaden and diversify the range of organizations that are engaging with social investment, and to do that in the widest possible sense, both from a thematically be addressing some of the infrastructure challenges that the sector had identified, and some of those themes you'll see represented there on this slide, but also in terms of from an equalities perspective in a way that reflected the values and principles of the Barrow Cadbury Trust about who was actually receiving this funding and where was it going, and was that representative of the social sector more widely and its wider objectives. Um, and as a result of that, we ended up having two funding rounds. Um, So the first round we held in June. It was largely targeting existing actors in the social investment space, existing intermediaries, fund managers, advisors, consultants who were actively working on social investment. And we wanted to foster some of those collaborative partnerships or initiatives to address pieces of the architecture that were missing. Um, then we had a second round, which we've now just closing, which was addressing the wider voluntary sector infrastructure, membership networks, organizations that might represent some of the charities or social enterprises, but and could better connect to social investment, so might act as conduits for capacity building, financial resilience, etc. Um, okay, I'm hearing that I sound quiet. I'll try to turn up my speaker a bit. Hopefully this will work. I'll try to speak a bit more as well into the mic. Right. So what that means in practice is that we are seeing a lot of shared initiatives and kind of regional partnerships that are coming together. And we've now awarded about £1 million to 25 organizations across 6 regions. So that's very exciting. It's a good start. And I think what's really even more promising is that, in a way, the sector has self-identified that these are the initiatives that they want to work on. They're coming together to do that, and there's a lot of exciting partnerships that are taking place, and the bulk of those are in the region. So as to date, we've funded projects across 6 regions of England, and going forward in this next round that will be finalized on the 24th of May, we're looking at bringing on board another set of 24 projects that will be more widely representative across the entirety of England. So all 9 of the regions will be represented very strongly. And some of these initiatives are also national in scope, so covering England-wide or testing out pilots with partners across England. Um, Here we have a nice snapshot of where we are to date with the 25 grants that we've made for £1 million, and it just shows you that the bulk of the applications that we've received have been outside of London, which is very promising. And you can see that right now these are the 6 regions and the concentration where the grants are going. I think what's interesting is that once again we've got a concentration in the southwest and in the north that we're seeing. So we've really actively gone out and tried to engage with other regions as well. And we're going to ideally bring on board, as long as the Investment Management Committee agrees, in May some additional projects that will widen and make sure we've got wide coverage across all of the regions. I think the way I want to think about the grants today, and I want to present them to you, is on a thematic basis, because I think that's a way that all of you could, at this stage, connect to what's going on. The ultimate objective of this is to try to foster that knowledge exchange and community across the grantee projects, and then more widely for those who want to engage with the Connect Fund going forward. And you can see that of the 25 projects that we've funded to date, a lot of them have to do with capacity building, data sharing, diversity, fostering networks and building out those networks that are representative of the sector. And then we're also quite concerned with skill development and fostering market information, and then trying out some business development initiatives that are working with multiple partners. If you'll see as we go forward that some of these themes are overlapping. So your grant may have been put into a certain thematic category, and you're maybe doing more than one thing. It doesn't have to be fixed. It's very flexible and adaptable. But for the purposes of understanding and making sense of what people are doing, we've used these categories to try to batch the initiatives that are going on. This is my final slide in the overview section. I just wanted to try to show this to you because I thought it was an interesting way of understanding the finance flows and where our money has gone to date. So to make this is a Sankey diagram for those of you who like these kind of technical things, but I like my infographics, and this was my attempt at doing one justice. So Um, on the left here, you can see that the money that came into Access, some of it was from the Big Lottery Fund, some of it was from DCMS, the Department for Culture, Media and Sport, and some of it was contributed by Big Society Capital. Now, these numbers are just indicative because in actual fact, the grant money that is able to be given by Access to us is coming from DCMS, just to give you an indicative sense that these were the three original contributors to Access. So the Connect Fund money, to date, we've given out £1 million, just over £1 million, as I've said, and you can see where the concentration of the funding flows are going into across the different thematic areas that I've indicated, the 8 thematic areas. And so this is just an interesting way of trying to understand the weighting of how we've supported these different initiatives. We didn't at the outset plan to have them balanced in this way, but I thought it would be good to share with you where things are going. And then we have another round two set of grants that will be decided at the end of May, and then we'll have further follow-on funding that we will make available in the future. Right. Okay. Does anybody have questions at this point, about the general overview of the Connect Fund, or anything I haven't answered that you want to raise to the group? I don't see anything in the chat function. Oh, I think Daniel's going to ask a question possibly, so let's wait and see if he's got something for us. Okay, good. Right. So I'm going to go through I'm going to do this in a way that ideally will make sense by theme, but will also introduce you to some of the grants one-on-one. And following this, I will then try and give you a deep dive from the grantees' perspective as to what they're doing with their grant. And if you like the format of the deep dive, in the future, we might do more interviews, more webinars that would allow for deep dives, or we can explore things on a thematic or in fact a regional basis, because I know that increasingly the regions will be coming online, and it will be quite interesting to see what's happening on a place-based basis. But right now I'm going to go through it by theme. Okay, so the first thing is capacity building, and we've got these great projects going on that I'm very excited about. I'm going to start with Finance for Sustainability. Their initiative is the Community Partners Initiative, and the key individuals there are Richard Speak, who I know is on with us at the moment, and also Rebecca Trevelyan, who's from the Library of Things, which is a really exciting social enterprise. And their project is a Community Partners project. As you know, Finance for Sustainability operates as a kind of incubator. They've got a lot of really exciting projects that they're working on a regular basis. And this particular initiative, they're partnering with Library of Things and Rebecca Trevelyan, who's got a track record of doing really exciting and new projects, engaging local community members. You can look at the Library of Things website, as I would encourage you to also look at the Finance for Sustainability website. Specifically, our grant is working on their community partners initiative. It will allow them to undertake the strategic market research and business planning to try to develop both an online and an in-person platform for advisors in the BCSE space, so to try to consolidate and bring together those individuals and to develop some best practice, to create a network amongst them, and that would ultimately become self-sustaining, because the advisors would be the ones that would then pay a fee to take part in this network going forward. And the idea is I'm going to read from my notes here, it will enable the BCSE advisors to better deliver high quality, targeted, user-friendly support, and will work as a membership organization for BCSE advisors. It's a really great idea that we wanted to support. We think it's a brilliant initiative. So I'm going to move on next to these two grants. These are East Side Prime Timers and the Northern Social Investors Group. And the reason I've grouped them together, I'm going to speak about them separately, but what's quite interesting about them is that they've put forward a proposal to tackle the same challenge, but from a different approach and in different parts of the country. And so we're quite interested to see how they address this issue. In the case of East Side Consulting, or East Side Prime Timers, they're going to work on post-investment support. the key individuals at Eastside Prime Time, as many of you know, I'm sure very well, Richard Litchfield and Bernice Brooke, who does a lot of their HR work, and she's very good at connecting the right people to the right projects. Eastside Prime Timers, of course, runs a consulting network of over 100 associates that they work with. And in this instance, they're going to try to crack the nut of post-investment support and how that could be better provided. And they're going to partner with social and sustainable capital to do that. And they're going to work with Key Fund as well. Yes, they're going to try to work with 10 to 12 investee organizations that have already been funded and to try to see if they can use a scoring system that was previously developed by Power to Change as a sort of effective diagnostic to help those organizations continue to better implement their project and business plans, which would ultimately result in more successful sustainable loans. Um, Moving on to Northern Social Investors Group, it's a consultancy based in Wigan. So, as the name suggests, focus on the north. And it's the key individual there is Paul Halfpenny, who's had a lot of experience working with social enterprises in the region. And the aim of his project is also to focus on post-investment support, but through the development of a network of trained social equity partners. So effectively non-executive directors who will work, who come together, um, be placed, trained, and then placed to work directly with investee organizations with the idea that they can try and address some of the specific challenges or opportunities that those organizations have or have been funded to do. And Paul has a particular relationship with First Arc to try to do that. Okay, so I'm going to move on now to the Liverpool CVS. Let me see if I can get rid of this. Here we go. I can get rid of this yellow stuff. Right, so Liverpool CVS is an infrastructure organization. So this is one of our first initiatives to come through the round 2 grants. And they want to, the key individual there is Colin Keeney. And their idea is to build upon their existing communities of practice that they have with VCSE organizations. And the aim of the project is to help organizations in the Northwest to explore how they can begin to um, develop earned income, build more financial resilience, begin to tread that pathway that would lead to social investment. And they're going to try to leverage these communities of practice that they already have in place to try and do that in a way that hopefully will be very effective. So I think those learning partnerships will be really interesting to watch, and we'll have to see how they begin to do some capacity building there with those organizations. Um, in a very different part of the country, we have Wessex Community Assets. And I know many of you know or have heard of Wessex Community Assets. They're based in the Southwest. The key individual there is Dominic Ackland. When I say key individual, I mean known to me as the point person for this grant. Obviously, there are many key individuals and many great people at all of these organizations who do wonderful things. So please don't misunderstand what I'm saying. More that your point person, should you want to know more about the grants, is Dominic Ackland. Um, so the interesting thing about Wessex is they are a kind of hub for how to work with rural community enterprises in the region. And they want to try to capture some of that knowledge and be able to develop a peer network for delivering that more effectively and efficiently going forward. And they want to consider building a kind of regional online platform, not to compete with or cannibalize what other platforms are doing, but to try and raise awareness of everything that's going on in the Southwest from an investment opportunity point of view. And so the community enterprises that they'll be working with are drawn from a lot of the local themes where local enterprise comes from. So food distribution, community housing, because obviously they've been at the forefront of the community housing and community energy work that's going on in that region. So they're going to recruit mentors from community projects that have been previously supported, and they're going to form a peer-to-peer network, and they're going to have a project coordinator who's going to bring all of these actors together, and there'll be a kind of a hub in that area for how do you support community enterprises to get finance and to become sustainable and be more financially resilient. Right. And then finally, in the capacity building area, let's see, I'm going to try to get rid of this, is the School for Social Entrepreneurs in Yorkshire and Humber, because as many of you know, it's a network, but the Yorkshire and Humber organization is independent. So this is a small grant to help them think about how they can integrate more social investment into the program that they already do with social entrepreneurs. So they're going to work with a select group of up to 10 social entrepreneurs who will be invited to participate in a 6-day action learning program following the model that they currently already have. And they will try to introduce social investment at a much earlier stage of their training and their learning. And the key person that I should mention is Sue Osborne in obviously School for Social Entrepreneurs is doing lots of interesting things, particularly on match trading, which we'll continue to watch, I think, in terms of how that works and the implications that has. I'm sure quite a few of you are involved with Alistair Wilson on exploring match trading as well as a new tool for helping to support social enterprises. Okay, so let's move on to the next theme, business development. So the Key Fund is one of the key hub organizations that we've been working with. They've had a role in many of the different grants that we've funded. The main grant that we funded them to work with through Dave Thornett, he's going to speak about in depth, so I'm not going to go into detail about it, but what I will focus on is that the Key Fund is based in Sheffield. They've always been very active in funding at the small to medium-sized end of the market, really interesting organization. And they're doing a great job of connecting to local voluntary sector infrastructure and trying to foster networks there and knowledge exchange. So it's interesting to see a kind of a regional ecosystem emerging, and that's really positive. The Connect Fund wouldn't take all the credit for that, but it's certainly something we want to continue to support. And then the Homeless Link initiative is somewhat different, but quite interesting. We funded a small feasibility study. Obviously, and Matt Harrison and Martin Reed. Martin may have been in touch with many of you about this initiative. Homeless Link has been very good at developing a Salesforce platform and creating a sort of a bespoke is the right word, tailored offering that's been very useful to their members as they try to manage their beneficiaries. And they're now trying to see if they can use all of that in-house experience, bring in some external technical experience as well, and create an offering that would provide management information for social investment funds. And they're trying to see if that's a business opportunity that they could develop. And I'm sure that they've been in touch with many of you and will continue to try to see if that's a product that they can develop to benefit the sector as a whole. Right, I'm going to move on to data sharing. This is another theme where there's a lot going on. So not just through Connect Fund grants, but through what Big Society Capital is doing, what Power to Change is doing. And the Connect Fund wants to continue to support that sort of openness and transparency and sharing of information and trying to find new ways to do that more effectively. What we've done to support that is we've given a grant to Open Data Services, which is a co-op based in Manchester. And Tim Davies is one of the key individuals there. And I know that he had a survey that he sent around to many of you. Hopefully you were able to take part. He's trying to better understand the standards and effectively develop a template for what type of information social investors would need or would be willing to share if there were to be a standard way of reporting on transactions going forward. And Open Data Services has a great track record in doing this, and they've worked very actively with Power to Change. And so it's worth touching base with Tim Davies if you're interested in how to share data more effectively. And related to this is almost the counterpart of this grant is the grant that we made to the Social Enterprise UK, which is the host entity for the Social Investment Forum. And we've given them a small grant to help spend some time coordinating the various the SIFIs, the social investment funds, and the intermediaries to try to get them to begin to think about how could they share their information with ODS and other actors in the sector. And obviously there are challenges with this. People have tried it before, but we want to continue to try to take steps forward on data sharing. So this will be an interesting way to get that done, hopefully. Here's another really great set of organizations working on diversity. I think one of the strengths of the Connect Fund so far has been the quality and range of proposals that we've seen on diversity. Again, Bonnie Chu is going to give us a deep dive into the Diversity Forum, which involves a number of stakeholders across the entire social investment space, primarily from the funds and the advisors. But I won't go into that in detail because we're going to hear directly from Bonnie the steps that have been taken there. But I will talk about the related proposals, which is at Dartington, we have a new Centre for Social Justice, which is being managed by Carrie Goddard. And many of you might remember Carrie from the Young Foundation and the Sky's the Limit report, which was very good at sort of defining and helping to set out the equalities agenda within the investing space. In particular, that was on gender lens investing. And now Carrie is going to tackle the challenge of equalities impact investing and try to set out a similarly scope whether there is room to define and move forward on the basis of an equalities lens and equalities impact investing. And she's also partnering with the Equality and Diversity Forum to do that research and to carry that out. So that's a very interesting initiative, also in the Southwest, but with national scope. In terms of the Black Southwest Network, this is an organization that is starting to dip its toe in the social investment and enterprise development space, particularly to try to understand and do research and better map out how to connect this type of funding to BAME sector and to foster enterprise development within this space. And they have, in particular, sort of partnering loosely with Bristol and Bath Regional Capital to begin to think through this problem. And the key contact there is Sado Girde, who also just spoke recently at the Good Deals conference and gave an overview of this. So that was a really positive experience. Right. And I also then want to move on to Voice for Change. I'm sure that many of you know the wonderful gentlemen there who do excellent work. Mr. Kunle Ololode, hopefully I've pronounced your name properly, Kunle. And they have a great track record of doing excellent work trying to raise awareness around the equality sector and the BME sector in particular. And they are going to focus through our grant on community asset transfer and how that could work for BME communities and BME VCSEs. They have particular expertise on that process of community asset transfer and what does that then mean for the pathway to social investment. And they've had conversations with a number of different social investors, and I know that they will continue to do that. So we want to continue to support them in that initiative. And so they're just starting to get that going and kicking that off. And then finally within this group is the Lincolnshire Community Foundation. They are a great community foundation. I really enjoyed visiting them in Sleaford. I enjoyed visiting everyone. I had a lovely sunny day when I went there, and it was very charming, and they were really lovely, and they told me all about their initiative and plans to work with women-led BCSEs, and they already have quite a slate, a pipeline of really enterprising women who are trying to get their social enterprises going, trying to get them to be more resilient, and they want to try. They're part of the UK Community Foundations pilot, which I'll talk about. I'll come on to. And so I think they're just a really neat little project, and we're looking forward to seeing how they do what they're planning to do, but also how they fit within the UK Community Foundations initiative. These are our networks. I think our networks are a little bit more straightforward because a lot of people know them, they know what they do, and in most cases what we're trying to do is support them to do more and better and to extend some of their work into the social investment space if they're not already. In particular, the UK Community Foundations, there is Vicky Papworth, who's heading up a pilot across 8 different community foundations to understand how each of them in their own way can begin to explore working with their donors to try to connect to new forms of investment. That might be through, in fact, in this case, they're partnering with Crowdfunder, and they're also partnering with Frederick's Foundation. So that's a really great example of how three organizations have come together and how they're testing different models with some of their cutting edge community foundations. And that will be a really interesting space to watch. And if you have ideas about that, you should definitely get in touch with them, because I know that they're really great at creating their own learning community and networks. And so that's something I would encourage you to do. So that's Vicky Papworth there. And we're also supporting the Social Investment Forum at Social Enterprise UK, so they can identify where they go with the Social Investment Forum. We've now got Charlie Wigglesworth, who is the Deputy CEO. Nick Temple has moved on to the social investment business, which is wonderful, and wonderfully that Charlie has taken over and leading on the Social Investment Forum, and where that goes and how does that become sustainable going forward, and what is the plan for how the SIFIs want to work together, frankly. I mean, they could become a much stronger voice in terms of defining where social investment goes and how it functions in the UK. So that's a real opportunity to connect to that and work through the Social Investment Forum. Um, then I've also supported Women in Social Finance. Similarly, this was founded by Suzanne Beagle, who many of you may know through her gender lens investing work. It's this project that was coordinated by Bonnie Chu at the Social Investment Consultancy. So if you have, and I should say that there are a number of women who are working on this project. So Sarah McGeehan and Servan Ruzan as well is actively working on the business plan for women in social finance. It's a great example of a network that already is, very sustainable and very active. I think they just want to take it to the next level, and there's a lot of potential for what practical steps they can take and practical interventions they can do from an advocacy point of view. Excuse me. And finally in this group is E3M, which is the network that was founded by Jonathan Bland at Social Business International in partnership with Bates Wells Braithwaite. And they really, what Jonathan has done through E3M is to spearhead a network of some of the top social enterprise CEOs, so the larger social enterprises that might be able to win public contracts. And the focus of this E3M network has been, and it has been on to bring on board what Jonathan calls bold commissioners. So this is an attempt to crack that commissioning that is very tricky and challenging for everyone involved. How do you get the critical mass? How do you demonstrate that to commissioners that you can be a key delivery partner for public services? And E3M is trying to innovate in that, in particular through what are called alchemy events, which will be place-based problem-solving initiatives to try to bring together local authorities, social investors, commissioners, and social enterprise delivery partners to think through in practice what could be done to try to address some of these challenges, and how does social investment play a role in that. So I think that'll be quite interesting as well. Right, skill development, we've got responsible finance, formerly known as the Community Development Finance Association, run by Jennifer Tankard with Theodora Haj-Michel. They just had an excellent and very successful conference up in Glasgow. I know a number of you were there, and there's a lot of exciting initiatives happening around financial inclusion. Our project is not particularly on the financial inclusion agenda at this stage, but rather on leadership across the entire social finance sector. And we're hoping that responsible finance can develop a leadership program, both really to try to deepen the range of individuals who and the backgrounds and experience that they would bring to working in either an ethical bank, a social finance institution, a CDF, or a social investment fund. So can we break down some of these silos that have come into play when we talk about financial exclusion or CDFIs versus social investment? Can that be done at the level of skill development? Let's test that and see. And I think there's a really big opportunity for them to do that. And I hope that they've been engaging with a number of you to try to make that happen. Similarly, we have Vaughan. Vaughan is really well known, great organization in the north. It's a voluntary sector infrastructure organization. Carol Botton is the contact there. and they are going to, in partnership with a number of other regional actors, including the Key Fund, try to work out how to do skill development, work effectively going into capacity building with their voluntary sector BCSE organizations, and they are going to act as a coordinator and hub to make that happen. So they're testing out how they, as a voluntary sector organization, can integrate social investment and financial resilience into the work that they're doing. And they're doing that initially at the level of skill development for their members. And then finally, the Community Shares Company is a lovely, very effective advisory consultant run by Dave Boyle. Many of you may know Dave Boyle. He's a kind of guru in the community share space. He's done quite a number of or been involved in and helped out with a number of the community share, high profile community share offers. And his idea, which I think is a very good one, is to create an e-learning online learning program for communities who want to understand what are the first steps they need to take if they want to do a community share offer. So he's trying to eliminate the bottleneck that happens when one by one the community groups come to the consultants, ask them what they need to do, what are first steps, what are the right, how should we go about this, and in order to scale up the community shares market, the hope is that this e-learning platform will have two segments. An initial kind of, here is community shares 101 that a community group could work together, and then they could designate two individuals or several individuals who go through a more in-depth online learning program, which would then spit out the basic documents and business plans and templates that they need to then have a more informed and value-added conversation with advisors who could then fact check and make sure everything is up to the kite mark standard. So I think it's a great idea, and they're well underway with that project, and they are involving others from around the community shares sector in videoing them and getting their expertise and contribution as well. So please do get in touch with Dave. I think it's a great idea. Right. I've got two more slides in this section, and then we're going to hear from somebody else, because I think it's much more interesting to hear about the grants from other people. So, but let's not forget these final grants. So we've got in standards, we've got the Cooperatives UK. We've got Simon Borkin at Cooperatives UK that's working with Jim Brown at Baker Brown Associates, and also Hugh Rollo from Locality, and the Community Shares, what was formerly known as the Community Shares Unit, is now trying to become the Community Shares Standards Board, and we're helping support them to do that. And I know that there are another number of other organizations that are helping them, and hopefully you can get involved with them as well if you're interested in that. They want to get international certification for the kite mark such that they can stand up to the FCA regulation, so that FCA doesn't have to regulate community shares, but there's a recognition at an international standard level that what they have, the kite mark, is best practice and is the right way to manage the community shares market. And they're continuing to do market making and market building across the community shares market. Right, and then we have market information. This is our last slide, last two grants. The well-known Pioneers Post, Mr. Tim West, and they've done an excellent job of highlighting a number of the key transactions that have happened in the social investment space, continually bringing out interesting content on social enterprise and on social investment, and we want to make sure that that continues to happen. I know they partner with a number of you and a number of other actors, and we just don't want that key valuable instrument for communicating about the social investment market, for challenging the social investment market, for questioning the social investment market. So Pioneers Post is one of our grantees, and they have a real opportunity to highlight any of the stories that you have to tell. So you should definitely get in touch with Tim West and his team at Pioneers Post if you have a story or question, or a challenge or an issue that you want to bring out. And we really hope that they'll continue to be a really valuable part of the social investment ecosystem going forward, which I'm sure they will be. And then finally, we have the Social Investment Intelligence Network, which is the David Floyd initiative. David Floyd runs Social Spider. He's been a really active, vibrant voice within the social investment and social enterprise community. He's always got really interesting points of view, and he's done a lot of research with he and his colleagues. Sort of, he occasionally partners with Dan Gregory and us to carry out really interesting in-depth research work on this sector. And this particular initiative that we're supporting is a kind of quarterly reporting from the market, from the voice of the market, so from the demand side, to bring out the challenges that social enterprises, either smaller to medium-sized or other social enterprises or voluntary sector and organizations are experiencing as they try to get social investment, as they try to become financially resilient, and as they try to grapple with this marketplace. They are going to meet quarterly with David in person, and he's going to write up these reports, and then he's going to reflect back to the market that these are the findings, this is the voice, this is what people are saying who are actually on the ground and trying to work through some of these, what social investment means in practice. So I hope you'll get in touch with David if you, he's recruiting members or has recruited members for that panel, but I'm sure he'd be keen to hear if you have good ideas about who could be on that in the future. And if you're interested in what he's doing, please do get in touch with him as well. It's great that you guys are sharing your contact details. That's wonderful. Okay, so now I'm going to let someone else talk. This is much better that you hear about the grants from other people. And the first person we're going to have present his initiative is Dave Thornett from the Key Fund. So bear with me while I bring that up, and then we will hear from Dave directly.
Hi, my name is Dave Thornett and I'm Business Development Manager at Key Fund Investments based in Sheffield. We're a social investor working across the north of England and we're managing one of the Connect Fund projects. Next slide, please. Our mission, as the slide said, is to put the right money into communities at the right time and in the right way for the organisations that we invest in. And this has really led us to what we're trying to do under the Connect Fund with our partners, and that's better understand how money gets into rural communities in the right way because we feel that they're underserved currently, and there could be much stronger links between investors, intermediaries, and grassroots organisations in rural areas. Next slide. So traditionally, we've seen the take-up of investment in rural areas is disproportionate compared to urban areas, and that's setting aside, the obvious differences that will come with population density and numbers of businesses. We would expect proportionately that there was a higher take-up of social investment in rural areas than there actually is, and we wanted to sort of understand why that was the case, and what practically we might do about it in order to get cash into the areas that it was required, but in a way that was accessible to those organisations requiring that investment. And we brought together a few partners in order to do that, the long-term plan being that not just Key Fund, but a range of other social investors and grant makers are much better connected both to the individuals and the organisations in rural areas to use money to create social change. Next slide, please. The starting point then really had to be to get some form of baseline. We knew that there was existing information available that looked at barriers to rural business development and barriers to social investment getting into rural areas, but we couldn't find anywhere that had been collected, and we thought it was important to understand those factors that have been identified and learn what lessons we could from that information. The first thing we did was to commission an independent piece of desk-based research, pulling together everything that was easy to find about barriers to social investment and barriers to business growth in rural areas. And that's resulted in a report called Borrowing in the Wild, which is available on the Trello board, and more than happy to email a PDF copy of that to anyone that might require it as well. And that piece of work was undertaken for us by a consultant called Adrian Ashton. Off the back of that, what we want to do then is to test some of the assumptions that came out of that piece of work, and to discover what else we could directly from local organisations, some that may have borrowed already, some that might be looking to, and some that perhaps debt finance, equity, community shares weren't actually relevant to, and get an understanding from the horse's mouth. So we commissioned 3 local infrastructure organisations to interview 20 grassroots organisations in Cumbria, Lincolnshire and Northumberland. And we're just pulling together the results of those surveys now, and that will give us a grassroots direct feed from community organisations in rural areas. And that information we can pull together with desk-based research that we've got to form a much greater picture of what barriers are, both from a statistical research perspective, but also from a day-to-day viewpoint from such organisations. The final piece of our activity in the initial phase is then to host 3 events, one in each of those 3 areas, Lincolnshire, Cumbria and Northumberland, and bring organisations together for a discussion about social investment, hearing from social investors, hearing from organisations that have taken on social investment, exploring both the good and the bad elements of the journey, and then talking together about how we might better improve that process. What are the tools that might be useful in that regard? What sort of support do organisations need? What would money have to look like to be useful to them? And we're quite fortunate that we've got some support from Good Society Capital to do that within their Let's Talk Good Finance Fund. Next slide, please. So part of the long-term aim is that intermediary organisations and grassroots groups in each area are much better informed, much better equipped to discuss their requirements around social investment, to seek that in a timely, constructive way, and to inform each other about good and bad practice, the best ways of getting the right result for you. And so we felt it was very important that we carried out our local work alongside local infrastructure organisations and took advice from them, but also passed on our knowledge and understanding to them, and went through this process together, learning as a partnership. And we're working with Bonn, North East, Lincolnshire Community Foundation, and just establishing a relationship with CBS. As I said, we are fortunate enough that Big Society Capital have made a bit of space available to us on the Let's Talk Good Finance programmes, and we have some events booked in Wigton, Wooler and Horncastle, those centres of rural excellence. And then finally, we have some involvement from other social investors like Charity Bank, Unity Trust, North Star and First Arc, to make sure that there's a broad presence of social investors across those events, that they're feeding into some of the learning that we have, and that relationships are built between individuals in the market and in the social investment providers, as well as institutional organisational relationships. We feel that the personal connection and the organisational connection are both very important if we're going to get some strength of relationship and longevity of relationship that will help bridge the barriers to investment in these areas over the long term. Next slide, please. So once we've completed those events, the aim is to share the findings from the research, the interviews, and the events more broadly. The starting point is the publication of our desk-based research, Borrowing in the Wild. As I said, that's pinned to the Trello board now on our project page, and is also available via email as a PDF if anybody wants to tackle that through that route. Once we've then brought together the results of the interviews that our partners are undertaking for us, we will then publish those as well. A little bit of narrative in there, mainly stats, some easy to read pictures. That again will go on Trello. The next stage will be then getting together with some of the organisations we've interviewed, some of the intermediaries and some of the other social investors to look at the practical steps, the tools, the guidance, the training, the network building steps that we might take to better inform ourselves as investors of what the market wants and needs, better inform intermediaries and enable them to help their members and their constituents be investment ready, be skilled in preparing information, know where to go for the type of money that they need when they need that. And then to look at the long-term health of networks between investors and grassroots organisations and what we can do to embed those for the long term and hopefully make sure that we don't get back to a point where there's an insufficient or inappropriate supply into these communities. Underpinning all of this is collaboration, not only in the delivery of the project, so we make sure that there's an independent rigor to some of the information that's being produced, but also that we build on a range of skills across organisations. And that's one of the things that's a much broader characteristic of the programme in itself, and one that we at Keyfund find particularly attractive. Looking at what people are proposing to do across the country, there are different approaches to this, from technical support to back office services to relationship building to geographic focuses. There's the possibility to bring together an enormous amount of learning and practice and wring much more value out of the programme as a whole than might be done if we just had say 20 independent projects pursuing their own individual fields of inquiry. So we're very keen to talk to and work with other Connect Fund projects, look at how our processes, our outcomes and outputs might align, might be delivered together, or in part passed on to organisations who are better placed to carry them forward than ourselves. And we're also keen to be involved in some of the other projects taking place, and we're already talking to CASE, to CERT, to Lincolnshire Community Foundation, School for Social Entrepreneurs, among others, about how we can help in their project delivery as well, and aim to really make use of the Trello board in terms of communication, getting our information out there and making sure we stay up to date with what's going on more broadly across the program. Next slide, please. So that's really an overview of what we're trying to do. Rural communities get money out in the right way at the right time. What are the barriers currently? How do we overcome them? We're really keen to talk to anyone who thinks we might have something relevant to them or might be able to help with and learn from them about what they're doing. Thank you.
Okay. So I hope all of you can hear that. I hope you can all hear me well. I'm going to, the reason I wanted to show you, ask Dave to speak to us, and he kindly took the time to do that. So thank you to Dave for doing that. I should have said at the outset that I chose these two examples because the Key Fund initiative is an example of a regional coordination and how, as he explained, a lot of organizations are coming together in the north to work on trying to crack this challenge around meeting the needs of rural enterprises. And now I want to hear from Bonnie Chu, who is coordinating the Diversity Forum initiative, and she's going to talk through that and give us more information about that. So you'll hear her voice and she'll talk you through her presentation. And I chose that as an example because it's an example of a lot of organizations working together, collaborating to solve a thematic issue or something that was identified as a problem in the sector, and that the sector has really positively come together to try to work through. So now we're going to hear from Bonnie.
Hi everyone, I'm the Managing Director of the Social Investment Consultancy, Bonnie Chiu. I'm very pleased to talk to you today about our Connect Funds project, the Diversity Forum. The mission of this project is really to make the social investment ecosystem as inclusive as possible. It was born out of the gathering back in February 2017. I coordinated a session together with Gemma, who's now at Big Lottery Fund, about the lack of diversity in social investment. We received a lot of interest from that session, and so a group of individuals kind of came together after the gathering, deciding to do something about this situation. And we're looking at diversity across all categories, from gender to ethnicity to disability to class, education background, and you name it. So we were very happy to receive funding from the Connect Fund, and I'm just going to talk to you about the scope of this project. And so this is our website, diversityforum.org.uk. And what we really believe in is that difference, whether it is a protected or unprotected characteristic, makes for richer experiences, workplaces, and decisions. So there's, of course, a moral case for improving diversity, especially when we're working with disadvantaged communities, that as much as possible, the decision makers should reflect the kind of communities that we're investing in. But from a business case point of view, that there's enough literature from the private sector that shows more diversity makes for better decision making. And so this is really the premise of what we do, and there are 5 strands in the project that I'll just talk through briefly. So one being leadership and convening, research, that we'll be commissioning research, skills development and resources sharing, data sharing, and communications. So leadership and convening has really been at the forefront of driving change at in our project. And so there is a diversity working group. It's a sector-wide working group, not just limited to investors, but really across all players working in the social investment ecosystem. The working group's role is to provide leadership to the sector on issues of diversity and inclusion, so that we can enable social investors to make better decisions, for employers to offer an inclusive workplace, and hopefully to also see an increase in the level of investment going to a greater diversity of groups or investees. So this diversity working group is chaired by Gemma Roslin-Jones and Danielle Sutter. They are engaging in this in their personal capacity, but it's really helpful also to have a broad spectrum of organizations to understand kind of what different kind of investors and players would be looking for in diversity and inclusion. If you are interested in this group, you can email Stephen Bidiaco, who's the founder of TSIP, and he is coordinating the working group. I'm working together with Camilla from Big Society Capital on Diversity Champions. So Diversity Champions is a more action-oriented network open to anyone operating in social investment. So it's a peer support network. They meet every quarter, and we help to convene the meetings to give them specific support around recruitment, training, culture, and best practices. We already have 30 members in this network, and we just convened our first quarter training hosted by Unity Trust Bank in Birmingham. And for this group, the trainings and the kind of insights that we gather from this year will accumulate in a training toolkit that will be shared across the social investment sector more broadly. And so I've just talked through the leadership and convening work stream. We also have other work streams. For example, I mentioned that we're in the process of convening a piece of research that will help us look more deeply into the issues that around diversity and inclusion in the social investment sector. So the research will hopefully be published by July and we'll be sharing with all of you. This will also inform the skills and development work stream to really shape the need for resources to be shared across the sector so that especially smaller social investors could get the help they need to be implementing these initiatives. Around communications, our aim is really to showcase the work that we've been doing. I chaired a panel on gender lens investing 2 weeks ago, thanks to Barrow Cadbury sponsoring that particular panel. And so we're hoping to just really increase the value and and the understanding towards this area in how it could make the social investment sector better. So if you want to get involved, you could scroll down to the end of the website. We'll be sharing an updated version of the website in the next month so that you could access more resources. But you could sign up here if you want to receive any news and updates. And I'm hoping that, especially in the data sharing workstream, that we could be working more closely with other Connect Fund projects. Thank you very much, and please email me as well if you have any other questions. I can be reached at bonnie@tsiconsultancy.com. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to come back now. Thank you to Bonnie for taking the time to do that. I don't think she can be on the webinar today, but it was very clear and crisp presentation of what they're doing, and I know there are a number of you who are involved with that work. And by all means, please get in touch with Bonnie or Gemma at the Big Lottery Fund or Daniel Sattar at Joseph Rowntree Foundation if you'd like to engage with them more actively. And I think it's great to see these ecosystems of initiatives that are coming together and forming informal partnerships to work on different pieces of these challenges and issues. So that's very promising. But now what I'm going to do is we're going to have a few more minutes. I just want to show you through some of the practical ways that the Connect Fund is trying to foster collaboration across all of the grantees. Currently, you're 25 grantees, grantee organizations. And in the future, as of the end of May, there will be ideally another 20 or 24 coming online. And so we want to make sure that there are tools, practical tools in place for this type of learning community, for the knowledge exchange, for the sharing of stories, for questions, for convening or having the conversations that you need to have. So I'm going to show you what we've put in place now in order to try to achieve that and to try to build that learning community. So the first step, which is the Trello board. I hope that you've heard of this. If you haven't, please do go online and have a look at it. It's effectively an online whiteboard forum to try to share information about each of the grantee projects. And you have the right to post anything you want there within reason, provided it's adding value and helpful and positive and good. We want to try to create a more vibrant space that you own. So you have permission to do and share and use that space. So please go ahead and do that. You can. I know I saw that Dave Thornett had posted his report there. I saw that Tim Davies from ODS posted his survey there, and that's the kind of activity we'd like to see. So you can go back and check on it. You can also subscribe. I won't walk through all the details of how to use Trello, but if you watch a short 5-minute video, you can subscribe to the cards that you're interested in, or you can subscribe to the entire board, and then you'll get email updates. So please use the Trello. The next thing that we've put up is our new website. We have a blog there. We're going to be asking more of you to contribute to the blog. So please start thinking now about what you would say about interim updates, about the stories and the voice and the narrative that you want to come out of your project. And we'll be asking you to write a blog. If we don't tap you on the shoulder, please tap us on the shoulder when you have something to say, and we have that space available. for you to use to communicate about what your projects are doing. We also have the group spaces site set up. This is a way to email everyone who is a Connect One grantee. You can set up sub lists in there. So if you all want to work on diversity, I tentatively took the liberty of setting up a data sharing group and a, um, a diversity group, but there may be other groups that want to have an email list, an email sub list across the projects, for example, capacity building or regional initiatives, and we can facilitate that through the group spaces site. So you have that at your disposal as well. Um, and finally, we have the quick meeting virtual meeting room now. So this is our first webinar, and um, any of those who couldn't watch it will be able to watch it in the future. You should all be aware that we have a permanent virtual meeting room there. You can obviously use Skype, but it might be helpful to you to have a link that people can click on and have a conversation. It's a space, a virtual space for you all to meet whenever you'd like, and we can make that available to you as a resource as well. We just send you a link, and that's all you need. Right. So the last thing I want to do is to talk about evaluation and how we're hoping to evaluate the project. Um, we are working in partnership with the Transformational Index, and I know that Andy Fulfield is on a webinar today, and he and the TI group team are helping us to think through how we make sense of and determine the outcomes of the Connect Fund over the length of time that it is active. And so what we've done is we've set up an evaluation framework. These 6 principles align very closely with what the Access Foundation is trying to achieve as well in its market building and in its enterprise development and in its launch of the Growth Fund. And so, but the way that we'll be doing this measurement is very much a formative approach. So it's not going to be a beginning benchmark and an end report, which then goes on the shelf over there. It's going to be more of a feedback process. So we want to encourage you to give us feedback. And as part of that, we'll be creating different ways of sharing information with you. And also periodically, we will be asking you for contributions, which can help feed into the overarching yet independent perspective on whether or not we're doing the right thing and how we're doing it. So I just wanted to briefly mention that and the TI group as because you may in the future have contacted by them. And Andy helpfully has put his contact details there. So if we do send you quick surveys, if you could please give us your independent, point of view. It's only to help us try to iteratively improve and adapt the way that we're doing things, and we're very open to suggestions. We've tried to avoid a tick box approach to the way that we've developed the Connect Fund, and we'd like to continue to be agile and adaptive going forward. Right. Um, with that, I'm going to finish, and I'd love to hear questions from each of you. So I'm going to put up a question of my own for you that I'd like everyone to take away and think about. And if you want to drop me an email or you want to somehow get in touch with me to try to answer this question, that would be very helpful, whether you're on the webinar today or you're on the webinar in the future. The question I would like you to think about as you go about your projects is of what are the stories that you have about how your work is connecting to more diverse or underserved social enterprises or charities or community enterprises, or how you're positively helping those organizations to build more robust enterprise models. So that could become a blog story, that could become a paragraph that you send me, it could become a post on the Trello. You choose how you respond, but please do try and engage with that question so that we can pull out some of the things that are happening across your projects and share it more widely with other people. Right. Does anyone have any questions before we close today? Is there anything that I didn't address or that you'd like to have addressed in the future? If you could either now include it in the chat section, or we can email me in the future. And we can think about the way that we do this type of webinar and this type of engagement in the future. We've had some face-to-face encounters. We've done the Good Deals conference informally, and we were present at the Responsible Finance conference. We may want to think about how we do other convenings or gatherings in the future. So we don't have to just be online, but I welcome your thoughts about how you could and would like to connect people in the future as part of the Connect Fund. Right, and since I don't have any questions from you today, I'm going to leave you with my question. I'm going to thank you for your time, and I hope to be in touch with each of you individually in the future. So thank you very much for taking part today. Bye, everyone. Thank you.